into the future where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So a little later on in the show today, we're going to be talking to Brent Smith, lead singer of Shinedown, who's an interesting guy. He has very publicly battled a lot of things, up to and including, well, sort of, he had problems with drugs and alcohol. I want to be sure when I say this sort of thing. I know he had struggles with addictions, and he very sort of publicly overcame them. But do you remember back in the day, do you remember that band Poison, Travis? You ever hear Poison?
The 80s band, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't want nothing but a good time. And, well, you know, who could forget the work of the philosopher/poet Bret Michaels of Poison when he pointed out one of life's more ubiquitous inconsistencies, the fact that every rose does indeed have its thorn. Those guys, Poison.
Oh my God. So cheesy.
Their guitar player, CeCe DeVille, interestingly enough, put on a ton of weight after he kicked drugs. I think he was a heroin addict at one point, and he kicked drugs and he got really, really fat. And he was like, you know, it was crazy. In Hollywood, it was more acceptable. It was more acceptable to be a heroin addict than it was to be fat. It was a crazy thing.
That sucks.
And I think sort of it's a weird thing in the entertainment business where weight is sort of stigmatized in that way. Like you're supposed to be ripped, toned, shredded super athlete, and any admission that you were ever anything but is a weird thing. But Brent from Shinedown actually did something really interesting where he lost, I don't know, probably about like 100 pounds or something. He really sort of meatloafed out at one stage in the game. And I don't know if it was from drinking or food or a combination of all the above, but he actually had not only a very public struggle with his chemical addictions and his dependencies, but also with weight, to where he did something that I thought was kind of cool. He talked about his weight loss. He talked about what it took to get himself mentally in a place to get back into shape. And, you know, he took great pride in it. I think in a lot of ways, by going through that publicly in front of all of his fans, kind of, I don't know, broke down the fourth wall in sort of an inspirational way. And now, I don't know if you know this, Travis, but the guys in Shinedown, you know what they do before every single show?
I don't know.
P90X.
Do they really?
Yeah. I mean, they put on an incredibly athletic show. Like, they are going to work when they hit the stage, and they do things on stage that you can't do unless you are in. I don't know. I get tired just watching the first 5 minutes of the show, let alone being one of those people on the stage. And then forgetting the fact that there's all these flame pots and stuff exploding. Like, you know, heat makes you more tired. Well, guess what? Giant plumes of flame coming up next to you. Like, all this stuff. I just can't even imagine the kind of shape that they've got to be in to do what they do. But they do it by doing P90X. So Brent Smith from Shinedown is going to be joining us a little later on in the show today. And because he's so sort of interesting in public with his, with his struggles, in an inspirational way, not in a boo-hoo, look at me sort of way, but in a way that I think is very valuable to his fans and just the average human being. For that reason, I look forward to talking to him in just a little bit. First and foremost, though, how could you go wrong? How could you possibly go wrong throwing your hat into the political ring with the last name Nixon? That's go well. So it's interesting. I think we've got. Let's take a listen to this.
New York is my home.
How you doing?
I've never lived anywhere else.
Yeah.
When I grew up here, it was just my mom and me in a one-bedroom, fifth-floor walk-up. New York is where I was raised and where I'm raising my kids. I'm a proud public school graduate and a prouder public school parent. I was given chances I just don't see from most of New York's kids today. Our leaders are letting us down. We are now the most unequal state in the entire country, with both incredible wealth and extreme poverty. Half the kids in our upstate cities live below the poverty line. How did we let this happen? I love New York.
Vote Miranda from Sex and the City. That's her campaign thing. What do you think? Would that make you want to go into the voting booth and pull the lever, Travis?
No. Well, it does make me want to go into the voting booth and pull a lever, but probably not for her.
Aw, you didn't buy her sincerity and her level of care for the kids? What are you going to do about these kids? How can we reach these kids?
Not so much.
Let's start the show.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks that actress Cynthia Nixon, Miranda from Sex and the City, would run for governor of New York for a while. People have been talking about this, and she officially tossed her hat into the political ring. And a finer last name to get into the world of politics one could not have, as we pointed out earlier. Cynthia Nixon played Miranda Hobbs on Sex and the City, which ran for 6 seasons from 1998 to 2004. She also did the 2 subsequent movies and has done a lot of Broadway shows in addition to movies and TV. Now, who was her main detractor, you were telling me, Travis? Like, who had some choice words for her after she announced that she was going to be running for governor?
Former city council speaker Christine Quinn. And it's the funny thing about it is the way the media made it come out. The headline said something like, Christine Quinn calls Cynthia Nixon an unqualified lesbian. That's
like that guy in Maine who called the Parkland survivor a skinhead, an unimpressive skinhead lesbian, or whatever the hell that moron said.
Yes, but turns out that's not exactly the full story. Imagine that the media deceived you.
What? You mean the media exploited partial truths to gain clicks and sell papers? Shocker. What was the full truth?
Well, she does apologize. She says that she's sorry, that she clearly apologizes for that. She says, her quote, it came out sideways and offended people, and it came out wrong. She does apologize for that. What she does not apologize for is saying that Cynthia Nixon is not qualified to be governor. To be clear here, though, what she told the Post is Cynthia Nixon was opposed to having a qualified lesbian become mayor of New York City, referring to herself because she is a lesbian as well.
That's, I kind of vaguely remember, like, I stay sort of in touch with New York politics just in a little bit. I mean, it's my home. It doesn't affect me on a day-to-day basis because I haven't lived there in a very long time. But I was just like, hold on. Isn't the woman that called her an unqualified lesbian a lesbian? Like...
Yeah.
Is this like the most extreme example of identity politics you've ever heard? No. If you didn't vote for me as a lesbian, I'm a qualified lesbian. She's an unqualified lesbian. Therefore, no. If you're going to vote for your lesbian, it should be this one. What the hell? Like, didn't Cynthia Nixon endorse her opposition? Like, what was the backstory there? Why are they sniping at each other?
Yeah, it was the 2013 candidacy for mayor, and Cynthia Nixon endorsed Bill de Blasio.
Okay.
So what the actual quote was, which isn't as bad, it's still exactly what you said. It's still not as bad, though. What she said was, now she wants an unqualified lesbian to be the governor of New York. You have to be qualified and have experience. She isn't qualified to be governor. So, did she say it? Yeah.
She's just butthurt because Cynthia Nixon, a lesbian, didn't support her based on the fact that she was another lesbian. Like,
exactly.
That's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything about Cynthia Nixon and her know-how with politics and policy. I mean, you say that it would make you go into the voting booth and pull the lever for somebody else. Yeah, I'm a sucker for kids. If she's saying let's give kids a better shot, like here's the thing you got to understand about me is that I believe that there's no one quick fix for all of the things that ail this world, but something that's going to put an awfully big Band-Aid on a lot of those boo-boos that we've got on the surface of America would be education. And education's more than just, graduating with good grades so you can get into a college and earn a degree and then get a baller job because of your degree. Education's more than that. Education is a sense of possibility. Education is something that, I think I've told this story on the show before, but Travis, where 59 meets 610, right? In Houston?
On the north side or south side?
Oh gosh, you're way better with geography, being the seafaring individual that you are. Like, my place in Houston is Herman Park, so I cross the bridge.
Yes.
Okay, so that area where you cross the bridge outside Herman Park. And for those not listening in Houston, it's an interesting area because Herman Park's really nice. And then you cross to the other side of the bridge and almost immediately the landscape changes. And
Oh yeah.
There was this one guy there that begged every single day. And there were many days, as much as I love what I do, where I did not feel like going to work. In no way, shape, or form did I want to get up, leave what I was doing, and crowbar my ass out of bed and go to work. But I would pass this guy every single day on my way to do a job that sometimes I didn't want to go do. And I started to feel weirdly resentful toward this dude, where I was just like, I don't know what kind of letting go it takes to be the guy that stands there on the side of the road as opposed to going out and getting a job. I mean, you're clearly willing to put lots of effort into standing out on the side of the road. And if you were to apply that to maybe getting a job, things would be different. But I really grew resentful of this guy who just stood by the side of the road asking for some of my money every single day as I was going off to do a job that at the time was kind of a difficult thing for me to do. And I remember feeling all puffed up and all indignant about this until one day when something very, very telling happened that completely shifted my attitude toward the whole thing. When I passed this place on the corner of 59, headed toward 610, and I didn't see the guy who had been begging every single day. I saw somebody else, and what I saw changed everything for me.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah.
So if you're one of the people listening in Houston, there's a very good chance you know the exact area I'm talking about. I live, when I'm in Houston, in the Herman Park sort of medical center area, and my trip to work, which is in the Galleria right outside the 610 Loop, is where the iHeart studios are. But my trip involved crossing over, and it's that point where 288 meets 59, which then meets 610. And traffic there is usually miserable. And I was oftentimes, when I was on my way to work, not in the best frame of mind. And this happened to me when, for reasons I won't bore you with, life was interesting in some challenging ways. And the last thing I wanted to do was get up and go to work a lot of the time. As much as I love my job, as much as I love hanging out with you, as much as I love sharing music and laughs and conversation, there were times where I just couldn't stomach it. And every single day I would pass this guy. Every single day I would pass this guy begging on that corner of the area where 59 and 610 meet. And I just remember feeling so resentful toward him, being like, get a job. You're putting all this effort into standing on the corner, begging for my money, and I'm going to do something that I hate just so I can, sell slightly less blood to make rent this month. And if you put this sort of effort into literally anything else, you could probably have it. What the hell are you doing? And I grew bitter and indignant toward this guy, which was a weird state of mind to be in because, he's just there. He's just on the street. He's just asking for money. He's clearly not had an easy way to go, but I managed to build up a certain amount of venom in my mind toward him. I think maybe because I felt like he could do more to fix his situation and he wasn't, and he was missing it. I don't know. But I grew resentful. One thing happened, though, one day that completely shifted my attitude and my perspective to where I saw things in a very, very different light than the way I'd been seeing them for the previous couple weeks when I've been encountering this guy, because I came around the corner and there was someone there sticking out his hand for money, begging, but it wasn't the usual dude that I'd seen. This time it was like 11, 12-year-old kid. And I was like, oh, that's not okay. This kid's 11, this kid's 12. And I don't know what his environment is. I don't know what kind of parents he has. I don't know what kind of opportunity he has. I don't know what his daily life is like. But I do know that at a very early age, this kid got it into his head that if you want to make your way in the world, you stand by the side of a road and hope for the kindness and charity of strangers. And that was such a defeated attitude. So young, you're already in such a disadvantaged position. And there's nothing you can do about it when an idea like that gets into your head. There's the idea that Bob Marley sang about in Redemption Song. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. And look, I'm not a Bob Marley quoting type of guy, but that truly is mental slavery. But it's not as easy to free your mind as old Bob would suggest it is in Redemption Song. And here's this kid who's got it linked up in his head that the way to do something is to hope that somebody hands you money when you stand by the side of the road. And it's such a diminished position where you don't have the chutzpah, the get up and go. You don't have the ability to take life by the short and curlies and bring it to its knees and make it your bitch and go out there and make something of yourself. It's so hard to climb back off of that sort of mental defeat when it starts at such a young age. So when someone like Cynthia Nixon starts talking about education to me, like I said, is so much more than just going to high school, getting good grades so you can get into a college, so you can get a degree, so you can get a baller job. It's more than that. And education is a sense of possibility. And education is a sense that there's more to this life than what you know. And education is something that will lead kids on this side of the world to be less likely to rob a liquor store. And on the other side of the world, less likely to strap a bomb to your chest. And education and the ability to think for yourself change everything. So when someone like Cynthia Nixon says, I want to do something about public school education, it really kind of makes me go, oh, yeah, man. That's true. Do you feel like did you go to public school, Travis?
Unfortunately, yeah, I did.
How did you feel it was?
Oh, it was terrible.
Was it really?
Yeah. I mean, I had a teacher or two that were really good quality teachers, literally one or two. But no, my view of the public school system, at least where I went, was it was absolutely terrible. I think it was an absolute joke. And I didn't go to college yet. I do think I want to go to college, and people will laugh at me now because I'm 37 years old. And
well, also the idea that you haven't gone to college is crazy because you've collected more. You've studied for and taken more tests and collected more qualifications. For those that don't know, if you're just hearing Travis on the show for the first time, this is a guy who is not only someone who got into the early days of the internet as a network administrator, but also you've been a cop, you've been a cop diver, you've been a cop dispatcher, you've been a train conductor, you are a tugboat. You're an able seaman. That's what you are. And
I am.
Here's the big one, the one that you really had to study for. You're an air traffic controller. Yeah.
So
the idea that you haven't gone to college And it's not like, oh, I attended the school of hard knocks. No. Like, you've got more qualifications than literally anyone else I know. So you are educated, just not so much in a college degree sort of way. But I mean, it's not even the college degree that I think makes the difference. It's the idea. It's the sense of possibility. It
is. But I've talked to friends of mine who did go to college. And it's funny, like, friends of mine that went to either medical school or law school made comments to me. They were like, you'll never understand how bad our education was until you're up against kids that went to private school and you're battling for places in law school and med school against these kids, and you're having to go up against them and the private school education that they got. And I was like, really? I was like, was it that bad? And they were like, yeah. And the more people I talked to, it just became very obvious to me how poor of an education, that I'd received. But, it's not that big of a deal. I think you can learn a whole lot more on your own, obviously after school. But, I think the public school system definitely needs a lot of work, for sure.
A buddy of mine who homeschools his kid, and I was like super skeptical of anybody that was homeschooled, because when I was 5, my mom homeschooled me for like 6 months before I went to school. And I think it was my father like was between jobs, but I think he got some sort of severance package from some company that he worked for. And he's like, I could either go straight back to work, or I could take these 3 months of, paid whatever. I could put my family in a Winnebago and we could travel around America, which we then did. And I was extremely grateful for that experience. It was awesome. Really, really cool thing that my parents decided to do. But I was of an age where I was supposed to get an education. So I remember my mom being like, it's time for school. And I think, my homeschooling consisted of nothing that was actually like going to school. So I was skeptical of the idea of homeschooling. This was, of course, pre-internet. And, my godson, really, I suppose you'd call him, is like 12 years old now. And the homeschooled kid hands me a paper that he wrote on geothermal energy. And what's very strange is when you talk to him, he talks like an 11 or 12-year-old. When you read the paper that this kid wrote on geothermal energy, it reads like something that was written by someone in their 30s. It was incredible, the disconnect between the language that this kid used and the language he was able to write when not using a speaking voice. But I was just blown away with the level of smarts. And I was like, this homeschooling thing seems to be working out. Is that just because he's really smart, or does it actually have something to do? And they're like, no, it's very, very regimented. It's all online. And he gets done with his work about, noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And he realizes that the quicker he does it, the rest of the day now belongs to him. And then he can go work. He can do chores. He can mow the lawn. He can, do all these things that he needs to do to, make spending money, at least the spending money that an 11 or 12-year-old needs. And then he goes and buys bits of computer and like builds his own computer towers.
So
I was like,
awesome.
Yeah, I was like, oh man. I was like, is there any downside to it? And we were like, well, eventually he's going to want to meet a girl. So I was like, at that point, we got to start getting him out of the house a little bit more. Like, he has activities and he can go to intramural activities. Like, he can play sports, and he had like jiu-jitsu class, but I think it was like mostly boys in his jiu-jitsu class. So they're like, he's going to want to meet a girl at some stage in the game. And for that, we might have to figure something out. Maybe he does, he does public school for the last couple of years of high school. At some point it will be down to him. So I don't know, but like apparently, like, I think if the kid went to the last couple of years of public school, he'd kind of sail through it because he does extraordinarily well on the standardized test. And look, every person is different. Every kid is certainly different. So homeschooling this kid seems to be working out great. It might not work out awesome for your kid, or it might not have worked out awesome for you, but I've seen it work. And, it would be awesome though. It would be awesome if, I'm not going to say Cynthia Nixon, because like, this is just, this is an actor running for government.
I don't mind that so much. I don't know what else she stands for is my problem. I'm for anybody who believes that the public school system needs reformed. I mean, and I have no issue with school sports, but the whole concept that school sports are one of the biggest concerns when the education system itself is what's leaving kids behind. I mean, if your kid can't play college sports, I mean, after college sports, if they're not a pro athlete, what good did that do them? In the sense of, if sports was so much more important than education, and that's the problem, is so many schools look at the sports, curriculum as so much more important than the education. It's just, the school system just needs it needs so much help, man. It just needs so much help.
Yeah. And I think, I think the reason that I'm sort of dismissive of her is not because she can't do good or she can't cause some sort of change. It's just like, I have no idea whether or not she's in any way, shape, or form experienced,
exactly.
Or if she is, as her arch rival calls her, an unqualified lesbian.
Exactly. Awkward.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe they played the identity politics card. You know what's interesting? She mentioned the subway problems in her campaign video, and there's a whole section devoted to it on her website. She even said, quote, unlike Governor Cuomo, Cynthia Nixon rides the subway every day. Unlike Governor Cuomo, Cynthia Nixon rides the subway every day. And you know what's kind of interesting? That kid that I was talking about there on the street corner that was begging. If you're in Houston and you don't have a car and you don't have access to some sort of decent public transportation, you're not going anywhere. Houston's incredibly spread out. Like, it takes a long time to get from one place to another place. And what's interesting is if you look at studies, kids that grow up in places where there's better public transportation tend to do more with their life. That idea that you can get from A to B, if you grew up with that in your head, that you can just go uptown on a subway or a bus or something like that works, that adds to that sense of possibility that we were talking about. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but there is a very, very real effect that working public transportation has on a young person's mind and the sense of possibility it gives them. It's fascinating stuff. So, I don't know. Fixing education, fixing the subway, all of a sudden, Cynthia Nixon, I'm having less and less of a problem with this, he said, not having to deal with the aftermath because he doesn't live in New York City anymore. This sounds great. This sounds fantastic. This sounds like it's going to be someone else's problem if I turn out to be wrong. So let's not put the research into that. All right. So we're going to talk to Brent Smith, lead singer of Shinedown, in just a little bit. He's going to be checking in with the show. They've got a new album they're putting out. They've got a habit of bearing their souls on their albums and doing that in person as well in a highly inspirational way. So we're really, really excited to talk to him. Aren't we, Travis?
Very excited. It's always, I want to say we've talked to him more than once. I want to say 2 or 3 times, haven't we?
Well, The Buzz, the station that you and I kind of have our radio roots in, was one of the first stations ever to play Shinedown. We were one of the first groups of people ever to be like, that thing over there, that's real. We believe in it. As it turns out, we were right on this one.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio. 104.1.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, joining us on the show, Brent Smith, lead singer of Shinedown.
What's going on? I can't even talk. What I was trying to say was long time no speak. What's going on, homie?
I'm really, really happy to talk to you. My question for you at this point is, you love it, right? You love work. You love working really, really hard, like all the time.
I just want to accomplish what I set out to do from the day I was born, which is everything that I'm doing right now.
Right.
And I've gotten a little bit better with taking breaks when I need to, but there's just a lot to be done. And if I wasn't inspired and I wasn't creative anymore, then it would be different, because no one, I don't think that you start to lose your artistry per se, then it's time to kind of take a deep breath, maybe bow out for a minute and reconvene and then come back to it later. But I'm just, in a place in my life right now where I just have a lot that I want to give.
Right. I mean, I'm looking at the gap between, threat to survival and attention, and I'm trying to figure out at what point you guys found the opportunity to write new music, let alone go in and record it. But I mean, hey, if now's the time, if now's the time to make wine, I guess you do it, because is it kind of like when Steve Miller had like 2 albums worth of stuff in him and he went, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do this again, so let's just knock out the next 2 in one shot.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is this, like the new album, which is called Attention, it's going to be out May 4th. We just released the single and the video at the same time for the first single, Devil. And the reality is that, first and foremost, one of the reasons we were able to make the album in the time we made it, and also with the focus that this album has, is the fact that it was the first time that we self-produced our own record. The wonderful thing about our career is that we've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of amazing engineers and producers, and we've always been able to keep our eyes and ears open, so it was time for us to do it on our own. And our bass player, Mr. Eric Bass, who is way more than just a bass player, he took the role and got in the captain's chair in regards to the production, and he produced the entire album, and he also mixed the record as well. Like, I spent 179 days with him last year in Charleston, South Carolina, because that's where he's from. It's also where the studio is. So about February of last year is when Barry and Zach came into the fold with the writing process of everything. But me and Eric had been, working on it since January, and he started to compile a lot of material when we were on the Five Finger Death Punch tour in 2016 that we did in November and December. So there was a lot of material. Interesting thing is that a lot of that material at the beginning of last year that we listened to, we only used a couple of things from those tracks that he was working on. Everything else was built from the ground up. But we also worked with Iron Maiden because we got an opportunity of a lifetime to open up for them in the UK.
What's that like? Because you're a band at the top of your game. I mean, you're seasoned, you know what you are. And, just listening to a song like Devil, I was just like, oh, they did it again. They've got a song that is pushing some boundaries, a song that sounds different, but at the same time, a song that could not be anybody but Shinedown. And it seems like you guys have such a fantastic and well-developed sense of yourself and who you are and what you want to do musically. You've arrived without a shadow of a doubt, and you did so years ago. But when you go out with Iron Maiden, in Europe no less, are you taking notes going, all right, this is how we do it in 20, 30, 40 years?
I mean, the experience alone of being able to witness the audience that comes to their shows, like night after night, was probably for me the biggest eye-opening experience. Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't grow up listening to Iron Maiden. And I know who Iron Maiden is, but I only knew Iron Maiden from, like, Run to the Hills and The Trooper. Now, Barry, on the other hand, our drummer, he has a massive connection to Iron Maiden. So when we got this opportunity, it was a big deal for him. But they could not have treated us, band and crew, with just more respect, and couldn't have not been nicer, and really just gave us everything that we asked for during the tour and what have you. They were just real fine gentlemen on every single level. But we knew we were going to have that tour last year, and that allowed us to be able to get perspective, too, because we also toured last year in July, did some other festival shows, and then me and Zach went out and did Smith & Myers in December. What that allowed for us to have is, just quite frankly, was perspective when we got into the studio. It's not like we did it like we had traditionally, which was, you go on tour for 2 or 3 years, and then you take an entire year to make a record, and then you come back after that. We just had momentum going, and, there was just no reason to stop it.
And I suppose, really thinking about this, that's a really excellent sort of juxtaposition of the things that are Shinedown. You go out, you play literal stadiums. You sort of, rock millions of people probably by the time the end of the tour is done. And then you also go out as a duo and play intimate situations. And, even if you're playing massive places when there's just the two of you, it's a very sort of intimate, up close and personal dynamic. I think those are the two things that make Shinedown really special. Like when you're a big rock show, you're a big rock show. When, in your quieter moments, you make everybody in that stadium lean in and feel like they're right up there on stage with you.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't take that lightly that you would say those nice things about us. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No, not at all.
We're never going to phone it in, man. It's just not the way we're designed. I think that all four of us are doing what we do today. And from the moment we entered the earth, it's all we ever wanted to do. I think that the audience has always been very upfront with us, and they've not made it easy on us at times because they wanted to make sure that we were being 100% authentic and honest and genuine. And a lot of the reason why we are the way we are live and on record is because we're taking the audience with us each time. We've always said the same thing because it holds true. We only have one boss. It just happens to be everyone in the audience. So
right.
We're just never going to be a band that phones it in.
Well,
so I think that we keep each other accountable for that. You know what I mean? Like the audience doesn't deserve any less.
I think you're right, but there's not as many bands as there should be that take that sentiment as seriously as you guys do. And I've heard it time and time again when I talk to Shinedown fans that I kind of feel like Brent's singing to me and about me. People are growing within themselves through listening to Your Life come out on these records. Speaking of which, more with Brent from Shinedown in a second.
My eyes are open wide. By the way, I made it through the day. I watched the world out.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
So if you're just joining us, we have been talking to Brent Smith, lead singer of Shinedown. If you had to pick something that you're dealing with on Attention, what might that be?
Pick something that I'm dealing with?
Yeah. Look, you put it all out there for all of us. Where, and I want to know what I can let myself in for when I grab the headphones and sit down with it.
Well, one of the things you make a point also right there. Of course, anybody can listen to their music the way that they like to listen to it, but this is a very authentic album in regards to the experience of listening to an album. So it is, from our point of view, we did intend for the listener, if you want to hear it the way we presented it, it is meant to be listened to from the beginning to the middle to the finale. The whole record is about, honestly, it's such a physical and emotional and a psychological journey. The whole record takes place inside of a room. If you watch the Devil video, you can kind of see how that plays out. But we want the listener to put themselves into the room and into the chair, because there's a lot of symbolism going on in the first video, with the first single being Devil, because this is the beginning of the story, and you're going to witness and hear the shift in this individual, but we want you to put yourself inside of the album. And in a lot of ways, it's a record about not being afraid to fail. I think that a lot of times people will put themselves into a corner and they will have things that they want to change about themselves or certain things that they want to go after, and they'll they end up second guessing themselves so much that they paralyze themselves mentally, and they can't go after it because they've already thought to themselves that they're not going to be able to accomplish it. And the thing is, for me, I don't believe people will be defined by their failures. I think you'll be defined by the fact that you didn't give up. And that's a lot of what this journey is.
I think you've hit on something. I think you are a guy who is comfortable being uncomfortable. Like I heard Jerry Seinfeld, of all people, this reminds me of it. Like I heard Jerry Seinfeld once say, I'm uncomfortable 45% of the time that I'm on stage, or I'm uncomfortable 95% of the time that I'm on stage. He's, a guy at the very top of his game, same way you are. But, it's one of those things where you grow so much by being willing to work and being willing to fall down occasionally. Like, when you go see a Shinedown show, there's no two ways about it. You guys are going to work on stage. You look like you're having a blasty blast, and it's an amazing experience for everybody in the room or in the arena or wherever you are. But you guys are up there and you're working hard. And it seems like, this character in the story, who you might know somewhat intimately, is also going through learning that it's, failure is a big part of succeeding and moving forward.
I think that you have to fail at times. You know what I mean? I think the universe will push you in different directions on purpose. Because if you don't know what it feels like to fail, then you're not going to be able to truly embrace what it feels like and what it means to win. And I think that it humbles you. That's really what it comes down to. And for me personally, from the physicality of everything, we take that very, very seriously as well. Nobody wants to. I always see the shows where there's like a big giant video wall. And now it's different if you're in a stadium and like somebody is hundreds of yards away from you, when you're doing those kind of shows where they are massive, then you're definitely going to need to utilize, IMAG and, a video element of what you're doing. I mean, if you want to. But the fact of the matter is like the reason why we use a lot of production value in regards to what we're capable of doing as just athletes on stage, and then also what we use in regards to pyrotechnics, how we utilize lasers, lights, the pacing of the show, all those kinds of things. Because if we wanted to just kind of have the audience watch television, then we would put a bunch of video up, and that's just not really the way we are. We want to make it exciting for the audience. We want to make sure that the audience gets exactly what they paid for. And you're absolutely right. It's our time to go to work.
You say you're comfortable with the idea of failure. You think you have to fail. From the outside looking in, Shinedown is one home run after another. Can you think of maybe the last time? Right. This is why I bring this up.
I don't know about that.
Well, this is why I bring this up. What do you think the last time you failed at something was? I know it's a personal question. You don't have to answer it, but I'm just curious because, like I said, from the outside looking in, it's triumph after triumph for you guys. And I think it'd be humanizing and valuable for the rest of the world to hear this.
So the last time that I failed was right before we started the touring cycle for the last album, Threat to Survival, which would have been around June of 2015. If anybody knows the story of me in regards to my history, I have had a past with substance abuse and alcoholism, and I slipped right before we went out on tour. And I was on a very, very, solid sobriety train, if you will. And the world had kind of gotten to me. I kind of lost my way in regards to, from a domesticated point of view, I didn't know what to do with myself after we got done with the touring cycle for Amaryllis. So, combat that with, anxiety issues and not being able to calm down, and wondering, if I was going to be able to top the last album and all those kinds of things. Of course, I'm going back to 2015. But right before that touring cycle began, I had a slip, and I'm not perfect, and I failed, But the fact of the matter is that I knew that I had slipped. I didn't dwell on it. And one of the reasons I'm very, very fortunate to have the band that I have is that, no one has ever judged me in the band. Like, neither Eric nor Barry nor Zach have ever, come at me in a way of made it my fault. They've never made it my fault. They've never judged me. They've just been there to pick me up when I needed it. And, there's something to be said for that. In regards to knowing how to kind of handle those types of situations. But I couldn't change the fact that I had slipped. I just had to start over. You know what I mean? And, I just started over, and I've been clean since. But, I don't have a problem being honest about the fact that, I'm not perfect.
Well, I think that's such a valuable thing for people to hear because, like I said, from the outside looking in, Shinedown is a string of home runs. And, you know, I think it's really valuable for people to go like, oh, you know, stuff happens to other folks. There's value in that. But I think the way that you pick yourself up and you carried on and you didn't go, oh, the world is now ending. I made one mistake. I had one slip up. I failed this one time. No, you were able to go, all right, that was yesterday. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other and I'm going to move on to the point where a couple years later, new record, new song, Shinedown that much closer to completely conquering the world. I think there's, you know, maybe a small part of one hemisphere that you guys don't own, but, you know, it's an inspiring time talking to you always.
The other interesting thing, too, about Attention is that it's a record about all four of us also. And we were kind of very open about we wanted to be specific on certain details, but we wanted it to have we wanted it to focus on, you know, what we were going through individually in our lives, but also what we see, you know, in the world around us. We can only write about what we know. Like, I can't pull stuff out of thin air. I'm not good at it. I have to write it from a real place, you know, unless we're being commissioned to do like a film or something like that where there's stories already written and you're writing around that. But when it comes to Shinedown as a band, we have to write it from a very honest place. And Attention is about me. It's about Eric. It's about Zach. It's about Barry. It's about, you know, everything and everyone around us. So we're pretty open in regards to how we present ourselves to the world. It's got to, you know, for us, it's got to come from a real place. It's got to have a heart. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's not worth it.
I think everything you do has heart. I don't know if you're capable of not putting your heart into everything that you guys do. It's a, you know, to have one person in a band that does that, that's special. When you have, you know, a bunch of you that are doing that and a bunch of you that come across as being on the same team and having that united sense of purpose, which is exactly what you get, whether you're listening to a Shinedown record or whether you're seeing you guys on stage, that's something special. And I think a big part of the reason why it's just onward and upward for you guys at all times.
Well, that does not fall on deaf ears, my friend, and that is very, very kind of you, and thank you so very, very much. But at the end of the day, also, you've been able to give us a platform over the years, so we don't take that lightly either, so thank you for all the support.
Well, dude, thank you. I'm sure you're being pulled off in a bazillion different directions right now, but I look forward to being able to continue our conversations as the years go on, and can't wait to be able to listen to all of Attention, Love and Devil, and can't wait to see you when you roll through town.
Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate everything, and we will definitely hang out sooner than later.
Cool, man. Take care. Have a great one.
All right, later. Bye-bye.